The sunlight spilled across my apartment floor, catching the soft silk of my blouse and warming the edge of my coffee mug. I stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, pretending the hum of traffic and distant sirens didn't reach the corners of my mind where old wounds still throbbed. My phone buzzed on the marble counter, a name flashing that I hadn't expected. Mom. I froze, fingers hovering over the screen. It had been years since they cut me off. Not because I'd done anything wrong, at least nothing worth severing ties over, but because I wasn't the son they loved, the perfect golden child who never stumbled. I remembered the sharp sting of their words, the cold dismissals, and the hollow look in their eyes as they chose him over me. Back then, I thought nothing could heal it. Now, holding this polished phone, my chest tightened in anticipation, anger, and a touch of weary irony. The text read, "Call us. It's about Daniel. Daniel, my brother. Their favorite. Their pride." My heart sank in a way I hadn't felt in years. The ache of old betrayals mixed with a surge of curiosity. What could possibly have happened to him that they wanted me involved? I leaned against the window, the silk sliding softly against my skin, and allowed myself a brief, almost guilty smile. Life had taken me far from that powerless girl they once dismissed. And yet, some chapters never close quietly. They come back to knock on your door when you least expect it. I was 22 when my world turned upside down. College loans were piling up. My apartment was a tiny box of peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture, and every day felt like I was swimming against a current I couldn't control. I remember sitting across from my parents in their pristine living room, the one filled with their expensive art and perfect floral arrangements, and begging for help. I don't know how I'm going to get through this," I said, voice tight, trying not to tremble. "I need a little support." My father sighed, shaking his head, and my mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "We've done everything we can," she said, her eyes cold. "Maybe if you weren't so dramatic, things would be different. Daniel, on the other hand, always manages. You need to figure this out on your own." The words hit like ice. I wanted to scream, to shake them until they saw me, not just as their daughter, but as someone who mattered. Instead, I sat there, choking on the lump in my throat, feeling the hot sting of tears I refused to let fall. Their choice was clear. I was expendable. I packed a small bag that night, clutching the only thing that felt like hope, a small, worn journal my grandmother had given me years ago. "Whenever the world pushes you down, write your own story," she had whispered. That journal became my anchor. Every tear, every doubt, every small triumph found its way onto those pages. By dawn, I walked out of their house, keys in hand, determination in my chest. I wasn't just leaving. I was claiming the life they refused to help me build. I didn't know where I would go, what I would do, or how I would survive. But for the first time, I believed that the world didn't have to break me. I had a choice. And for the first time in my life, I chose me. I started small. Every morning, I walked into a cramped co-working space with my grandmother's journal tucked under my arm and a bag that carried little more than hope and determination. I took odd jobs, anything that would pay rent and keep me afloat, but I also kept my eyes open for opportunities that might turn into something bigger. That's when I met Claire, a seasoned marketing executive who noticed the fire in my eyes long before I noticed it myself. "You have talent," she said one rainy afternoon, her voice gentle but firm, "but you need to believe it." I wanted to scoff. Belief hadn't exactly been my strong suit, but something about her certainty sparked a quiet courage in me. She took me under her wing, teaching me the ropes, introducing me to clients, and pushing me past the walls of self-doubt that I hadn't even realized were still standing. The nights were long, the coffee stronger than my patience, and there were moments I considered giving up. I'd sit at my tiny desk, rubbing the bridge of my nose, feeling the weight of every failure, every mistake. But slowly I began to win. My first client came after months of rejections, a small boutique that trusted me with their entire marketing campaign. The success wasn't flashy, but it was mine, hard-earned and real. I celebrated quietly, snapping a photo of the first profit in my journal, writing in the margins, I did this. As the months turned into years, my portfolio grew, as did my confidence. I learned to speak up, to negotiate, to demand respect in rooms where I had once felt invisible. I rented a modest loft in the city, decorated with pieces that reminded me of my journey, my grandmother's journal, a framed first paycheck, and the little reminders of every struggle I had survived. And through it all, I never told my parents. I kept my life small in the versions they might see. Social media posts that hinted at happiness, but never revealed my growing success. I didn't want their praise. I wanted to prove, mostly to myself, that I could thrive without them. The thought of showing them then felt unnecessary, almost cruel. Yet, somewhere deep in my chest, I knew that time would come. That moment would arrive when the world, or perhaps they, would see me as I truly was. By the time my phone buzzed with the news about Daniel, I had built a life that was fully mine. I had faced hunger, doubt, and the echo of rejection, but every challenge had made me resilient. I had learned that independence wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, quietly, deliberately, and unapologetically. When my parents arrived at my loft, I almost didn't recognize the anxious, fragile energy they carried. Daniel's arrest had clearly shaken them, and the tension in their shoulders made them look smaller than I remembered. They stepped into my world, expecting to find the same daughter they had once dismissed, weak, struggling, unsure. Instead, they were met with a life that screamed success, elegance, and self-possession. The loft was bathed in the soft morning light, highlighting walls adorned with contemporary art I had collected piece by piece, each canvas a testament to years of hard work and sacrifice. My desk gleamed with polished oak, stacked neatly with contracts and project portfolios. A coffee machine hissed quietly in the corner, the aroma mingling with the faint scent of fresh flowers in a vase I had picked up on my way home from a client meeting. Every detail, every object, told a story they had never cared to see before. I met them at the door, my heels clicking against the hardwood, a soft but deliberate rhythm. My parents' eyes darted around the room, disbelief flickering in their expressions. My mother's lips pressed into that familiar thin line, though her eyes betrayed shock, maybe even a hint of shame. My father's hand twitched nervously near his coat pocket, a gesture I remembered from the moments he had lectured me for being too sensitive. I didn't rush to speak. I let them take it all in, the loft, the art, the atmosphere of a life fully curated by someone who had fought to claim it. Finally, I cleared my throat and said, "Daniel called me from jail. You wanted to see me. Here I am." Their silence was heavy, almost palpable. "I also want you to see something else," I continued, walking them through my office, my voice steady but warm. "These contracts, these clients, they're mine. Every deal, every success, is the result of years I spent building myself from nothing. I didn't need help, and I certainly didn't need favoritism. But I did need belief, and I found it where I could, not in the people who should have supported me the most." Their jaws tightened. My mother's eyes glistened, though she didn't dare meet mine. My father's shoulders slumped, a faint sigh escaping him as reality finally sank in. The girl they had dismissed, the one they believed would crumble, had built an empire quietly and deliberately, without a word of complaint or a plea for recognition. I paused by the floor-to-ceiling windows, letting the city stretch endlessly behind me. "I've thrived without you," I said softly. "But you're here now, and Daniel is depending on me. I can help, but understand this. Nothing is the same. I am not that powerless girl anymore." For the first time in years, I saw the weight of guilt in their eyes. The world had changed, and so had I. They had underestimated me once, and the consequences were theirs to face. I had the power now, and I intended to wield it with clarity, compassion, and the unshakable strength I had carved from years of rejection. I led them to the sitting area, letting them take in the view of the city skyline, the light glinting off the glass towers. I sat gracefully, folding my hands in my lap, and waited until the tension thickened. It was my turn now. The power had shifted. I wasn't the desperate daughter begging for crumbs of approval. I was the woman who had built a life entirely on her own terms. I will help Daniel. I began, my voice steady but layered with authority. But not without conditions. Not without lessons learned. My parents exchanged wary glances. My mother's fingers twisted nervously in her silk scarf. My father's jaw was tight, but he didn't interrupt. I continued. First, honesty. No more hiding things from each other. No more pretending everything is perfect when it's not. Daniel's situation is serious, and it exposes the cracks you've ignored for too long. We fix that now, starting with truth. I let my words hang, watching their expressions shift from defensiveness to quiet acknowledgement. Second, accountability. Daniel is my responsibility now, but you will also contribute in ways that make sense, emotionally, financially, and morally. No more treating me as if I'm disposable while the golden child gets a free pass. My mother's eyes flickered with shame. My father's hands clenched briefly before loosening. Third, no favoritism. Every child deserves the same support, the same belief. I've spent years compensating for what you withheld, and it stops here. If we move forward, it will be fair, no exceptions. Finally, I leaned forward slightly, letting my voice soften, but not weaken. And fourth, growth. All of you need to let go of old habits that keep you small, fear of change, judgment, comparison. If we're going to rebuild, it has to be with open minds and hearts. They nodded slowly, the weight of my words settling in. I could see the flicker of realization in their eyes, the understanding that they had underestimated me, and that now, the path forward would be guided on my terms. I allowed a small, compassionate smile. I care about all of you, but I will not compromise my boundaries. I will not repeat the past. I am not that powerless girl anymore. For the first time, my parents listened, not just hearing, but truly seeing the woman I had become. They understood that this wasn't about punishment. It was about recalibrating relationships that had long been lopsided, teaching lessons they had failed to impart when it mattered most. I leaned back in my chair, letting the skyline glow behind me. This was my domain now, my rules, my terms. Helping Daniel didn't make me weak. It made me deliberate, strong, and just. I could be compassionate without being compromised. For the first time, the power didn't feel heavy. It felt right. Weeks passed, and slowly, the first shifts began. Daniel's situation stabilized, not because my parents had suddenly transformed overnight, but because they were willing to meet the conditions I had set. My mother started attending therapy, learning to recognize the patterns of favoritism and fear that had dominated her life. My father, in quiet gestures, began checking in on me, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity and support. I watched them grow, and in turn, I felt the final layers of resentment begin to peel away. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was enough. Enough to see that people could change when faced with the truth, enough to recognize that my own life had been mine to claim all along. Late one evening, I sat in my loft with my grandmother's journal open on my desk. The pages were filled with the story of a girl who had left everything behind, fought through nights of doubt, and carved out a life that no one could take away. I ran my fingers over the worn leather cover and whispered softly, "You were right. I did write my own story." The city lights flickered outside the window, and for a moment, I let myself breathe fully, deeply, without guilt or fear. I had endured the rejection, the betrayal, and the pain of being dismissed when I needed them most, and I had come through stronger, wiser, and unshakably confident. When my parents entered the loft one evening, Daniel finally free and calmer, there was a new energy between us. We were still a family, yes, but one that operated differently now. I could help without losing myself, guide without compromising my principles, and love without allowing old patterns to dictate my worth. I closed the journal, standing by the window once more. The soft silk of my blouse brushed against my skin, the city thrummed beneath me, and the world felt vast and open. I had claimed my life, my power, and my voice, and nothing could take that away. And in that quiet, triumphant moment, I realized I was not the girl they had underestimated. I was the woman I had always been capable of becoming. Independent, resilient, whole.